June 15, 1904, Dawson Daily News, Dawson, Yukon Territory, Canada. An appalling disaster. 500 persons drowned and burned. New York, June 15. 500 persons, mostly children, perished today by the burning of the excursion steamer General Slocum near Hellgate in the East River. The annual Sunday school excursion of St. Mark's German Lutheran Church of the city had chartered the steamer and was on the way up the river to Long Island Sound. One off 125th Street, the persons on shore saw smoke and flames spring up from the upper part of the steamer. A panic ensued on the boat immediately. The crowds on the forward deck were panic-stricken and began to spring overboard or crowd to the after part of the boat. The screams of the terrified passengers were heard on shore, and hundreds of small boats immediately put off to the rescue. Owing to the rocks on either side of the channel at this point, it was impossible to beach the vessel. The captain stuck to his post and steered the vessel straight through Hellgate for North Brother Island, where the vessel went ashore in the shallow water. Immediately, most of the remaining men, women, and children proceeded to throw themselves into the water, and many were drowned before they could be picked up by the fleet of small boats lining the shore. A careful count of all the names of those reported picked up in the East River, Hellgate, and off the island leaves 600 names unanswered to, but it is thought 100 are yet on the small steamers and launches to which they were transferred from the small boats. Bodies are yet being picked up floating with the tide, and fully 5,000 craft of every description are patrolling the sounds and narrows so that the little corpses may not be washed out to sea and lost. Several hundred bodies are being laid out at the morgues and undertaking establishments, and parents and friends are frantically besetting all such establishments for news of the 1,000-odd persons who took the excursion. The distress in the city over the accident amounts almost to a panic. There were among the lost relatives of prominent city and state officials, and the bitterest criticism of the boat management is heard on all sides over the ship's inability either to restrain its passengers or the flames. Escaped passengers tell the most heartrending tales of the scenes during the panic on board. Children leaped and were crowded over the low bulwarks, and mothers jumped into the sea after them. Children followed their mothers overboard with all the confidence of childhood. Some of the men aboard were badly overcome with fright, but the majority acted heroically. One man is reported to have jumped overboard and kept 6 children afloat until rescued. A member of the New York Fire Department at Brother Island brought 19 ashore, and himself sank exhausted at the 20th attempt at rescue. It would seem at this time as if half New York City was afloat and engaged in the search. The police department and police patrol boats are in charge of the search and transmitting information and descriptions as fast as bodies are recovered. It is feared that what bodies shall not have been recovered by the settling down of darkness will be lost, for the tides run swift at this point. There is also the added possible horror that ghouls will be difficult to hold in check after dark. 500 feet of open water lay between the steamer and the shore. It is estimated the vessel carried more than 2,000 people. It was the largest excursion steamer in these waters. It could carry about 4,000 passengers. So quick was the spread of the flames the captain could not turn the boat and was forced to make head-on for North Brother Island under full steam. By the time the General Slocum reached 125th Street, the excursionists had all been driven to the rail. Many had their clothing on fire and began to jump overboard in 2s and 3s. When 138th Street was reached, the heat was so intense Men, women, and children plunged overboard by the score. There was a terrific crash when the boat was beached, and then she rapidly burned to the water's edge. It is said the fire started at the lunch counter in the forward part of the boat. When the alarm spread, the hurricane deck was so crowded that while off 136th Street, the deck collapsed. Many were thrown into the water thereby, and hundreds were precipitated to the lower deck, which was crowded with women and children. New York, June 15. Captain William Van Schaik, who commanded the Slocum, has been arrested. He is one of the oldest excursion captains in the New York harbor waters. The Associated Press. June 22, 1904, Dawson Daily News, Dawson, Yukon Territory, Canada. Total is now 846. The Associated Press, New York, June 22nd. The list of known dead from the General Slocum disaster reached 846 at 2 o'clock this morning, and nearly every succeeding hour has added to this total. From the appearance of some of the bodies, the opinion is becoming general they have been taken from the water before, the rings taken from the fingers, and then placed back in the stream. Just to what extent this has been practiced cannot be known, for in the excited condition of the bereaved friends and relatives, it is impossible to get a correct description of the articles of jewelry worn by the excursionists whose bodies are being recovered. The fleet of searching boats is being constantly patrolled by the police boats and private launches secured by the authorities, but it is impossible to properly guard the many miles of shore, though the attempt is being made with mounted police. June 30, 1904, the Clinton Morning Age, Clinton, Iowa. Slocum's owners and crew held, charged with criminal responsibility in connection with disaster. Warrants are issued for their arrest. Several are released on bail. Coroner's jury concludes investigation and renders a verdict, federal body to take up matter. New York, June 29. The inquiry conducted by Coroner Berry and a jury into the General Slocum disaster was concluded Tuesday, and after nearly 4 hours' deliberation, a verdict was rendered, in which the directors of the Knickerbocker Steamboat Company, the captain of the Slocum, Captain Peace, the commodore of the company's fleet, and others were held criminally responsible. Warrants for their arrest were issued. The mate of the Slocum, according to the jury, acted in a cowardly manner, and the misconduct of Steamboat Inspector Lundberg, it is recommended, should be brought to the attention of the federal authorities. The charge in each case was manslaughter in the second degree. Bail was fixed by the coroner in amounts varying from $1,000 to $5,000. The directors of the company are Frank A. Barnaby, President, Charles E. Hill, Vice President, James K. Atkinson, Secretary, and C. DeLacy Evans, Robert K. Story, Floyd S. Corbin, and Frank G. Dexter. Main points in verdict. The main points in the verdict are as follows: that the President, Frank A. Barnaby, the Secretary, James K. Atkinson, and the Board of Directors of the Knickerbocker Steamboat Company, namely Frank A. Barnaby, Charles E. Hill, James K. Atkinson, C. DeLacy Evans, Robert K. Story, Floyd S. Corbin, and Frank G. Dexter, were guilty of criminal negligence in the failure to see to the proper equipment of the General Slocum in the manner of the firefighting and the life-saving appliances on board said boat. Captain is blamed. That the captain, William H. Van Schaik, be held criminally responsible for the accident. That the captain, John A. Peace, the acknowledged commodore of the fleet, be held criminally responsible for his failure to properly equip the General Slocum with firefighting and life-saving appliances. That Edward Flanagan, the mate, acted in a cowardly manner, and we recommend that he be held criminally responsible for the failure to perform his duty on the General Slocum on the day of the disaster. That in the opinion of this jury, the misconduct of Henry Lundberg, the government inspector, in failing to report to his superiors the true facts concerning the vessel's fire extinguishing and life-saving equipment, should be brought to the notice of the United States prosecuting officials, and we further hold that said Henry Lundberg be held for criminal negligence by reason of his incompetence, careless and indifferent inspection of the General Slocum's hull and life-saving appliances on the 5th day of May 1904. Inspection system lacks. The jury are also of the opinion that the system of inspection which prevails in the harbors of New York is very inefficient and does not properly determine whether the life-saving apparatus and fire appliances on the vessels in this harbor are in proper and suitable condition to prevent the loss of life, and we recommend to the Secretary of Commerce and Labor that he issue such instructions to the supervising and local force of inspectors as will cause them to efficiently and honestly examine the steamboats plying in and about this harbor. Federal jury to investigate. Through an agreement between United States District Attorney Burnett and District Attorney Jerome, the cases of the persons named by the coroner's jury as being responsible for the General Slocum disaster will be presented to the federal grand jury. General Burnett said the evidence adduced at the coroner's inquest would be placed before the federal body Thursday, and that he would take personal charge of the matter. Mr. Jerome said he had placed the matter in General Burnett's hands because there was doubt as to the jurisdiction of the county court. Several directors of the Knickerbocker Steamboat Company, all of whom are charged with responsibility for the Slocum horror, Wednesday surrendered to Coroner Barry and were admitted to bail to await the action of the grand jury. June 16, 1905. The Daily Star, Fredericksburg, Virginia. Monument to Slocum victims. Granite shaft erected in memory of dead in steamship disaster. New York, June 16. A granite shaft erected in memory of those who lost their lives in the disaster to the excursion steamer General Slocum in the East River a year ago was unveiled in the Lutheran Cemetery in Middle Village, Long Island. Nearly 1,000 lives were sacrificed when the Slocum was burned, and of those who perished, 61 were buried in the plot where the monument unveiled was erected. The monument is of granite, 20 feet high, 8 feet 6 inches square at the base. On one side is a bronze plate depicting the burning steamboat in bas-relief. 4 life-size figures in bronze adorn the monument: memory, grief, faith, and hope.